Hi, everybody. This is James Cronenberger. Food for thought, and this is something that's been on my mind for a while. Today, I just saw an article of a Trumbull County judge getting arrested for a DUI, and um, which was I think, a first degree misdemeanor and a fifth degree felony, something to do with a gun. I'm just wondering if he would get out of it because he's a political figure. It seems to me that people that are in position would get out of trouble when they commit crimes, just like this thing with the Russian hoax that I personally do believe that President Obama had something to do with, and Hillary Clinton. Um, will they get out of it just because he served as president? For 4 years, all they tried to do was set up President Trump with criminal charges, which was pretty much fake. Um, they spent hours after hours during Trump's first term in the Congress trying to impeach him and bring up charges on him instead of putting our country first. And that is getting to be a problem in our nation. That we have people that we entrust with making laws that would be fair for all people, and they're breaking laws themselves, committing crimes, perjury. Um, Look at that former congressman who's a U.S. senator now from California, how he tried his darnest to set President Trump up. Nancy Pelosi, you know, they never did put the country first. And the Democrats aren't going to be able to win until they revamp their whole platform and start realizing that Americans need to come first. We're the ones that elect people in public office. It's just a disgrace with what we're seeing now. And it's been happening for years. Look at some of the good people that's been deported back to their countries that have not committed crimes, but now they're going after just the criminals, and that I don't have a problem with. But if you came here, you're working, you're trying to support your family, you're paying taxes, let them stay. You don't need to kick them out of our country. Our country is supposed to be the land of the free. I've been a prisoner advocate for almost my whole time home, and I watch a lot of YouTubes on prisons, executions in other countries. Our country is still one of the best compared to some of these other countries. We go to the Philippines where the inmates are basically laying on top of each other. You go to, I think it's in Africa, that they give you maybe a half a bowl of rice, and if your family doesn't bring you anything to eat, you're not gonna eat. You're gonna starve. And the inhumane conditions. There's no excuse for treating prisoners with disrespect. Their disrespect was being taken away from their families. And we also know that there's some that are innocent that are incarcerated. But how many of these politicians will end up in prison for committing crimes? Will that judge be sanctioned? Will he lose his position as a judge? Or will people vote him back in? I remember James Traficant from Youngstown, just because he voted with the Republicans on a lot of things, the Democrats were after him, and he ended up going to prison. I don't believe he was guilty of the stuff that he said he was. It sounded to me more the Democrats just wanted to get rid of him. Out of good conscience, I wouldn't be able to support the Democratic Party until they change their value system, put Americans first, put God first. When they say, well, God's not supposed to be into it, in God we trust, our forefathers implemented biblical principles. At least in my opinion, they did. I know there's a debate on that, but when you leave God out of your nation and out of your daily living, your country is only going to be doomed. That's why I'm very careful who I vote for. Back in, I think it was in 1980 or so, I was still in high school, I started a group called Greater Cleveland Youth for Life. I modeled it after Youth for Christ that Dr. Billy Graham started, I believe, in the 30s or 40s. But it was a group of young people that cared about the sanctity of all human life. That life, from the moment of conception to natural death, is life. It's not a blob of tissue. Doctors even have said it's not a blob of tissue. I understand in the life of the mother, but just because of inconvenience, that's not an excuse to murder an unborn baby in any case. And it is murder. You can't go on the street and just kill a dog. You get into trouble. But you can kill an unborn baby, and they call that acceptable. That's what's wrong with our nation today, is that we have fallen away so far from God and from biblical principles that our nation is starting to fall. You got Russia, you got China, you got North Korea, Russia. They're all in cahoots together. And they run the government. The people don't have much say-so. In some countries, the candidates have came up missing that had ran against them. So we just wonder really what happened to those people. In America, we have a right, even felons have a right to run for political office. At least in Ohio they do. We can register to vote the day you get out of prison. And I would suggest that people do that and quit looking at the D or the R, but look at the issues that the candidate has. Where do they fall on prison reform? It seems to me now that we're getting more help from the Republicans on that than the Democrats. So we have an obligation. If we don't vote, we don't really have a right to complain. And complaining isn't going to get you nowhere if you don't go out there and vote and put your 2 cents in. And share with people why you vote for that candidate. If be honest to the candidate if you see him, why you won't support him or why you will support him. And let's see if we can make changes in our great nation. I think God put President Trump in office for a reason. I do believe he is a Christian that makes mistakes just like any of us. I'm just excited with some of the things that's about to happen in our nation, but I'm also saddened with what has happened in the past, the corruption. It started with Watergate, then Bill Clinton, then this thing with the Russian collusion that President Trump and Hillary Clinton kind of trumped up. So we need to make some drastic changes, and we need our political people to be held accountable for their actions, no matter who they are, no matter if they're white, black, Asian. It doesn't make any difference. Race should never play a role in our nation because God created all people equal. And not one is greater than the next. I always wondered if the race thing came in effect when the people tried to build the Tower to Babel to reach heaven, and God had everybody speak a different language because he was not pleased that they were trying to build a tower, which they never could build a tower. We don't know for sure if heaven's up, sideways or where it's at. I know I got to a peak of heaven when I died in 2020, but and it was just like a blinking of an eye that I appeared. You know, so there's, you know, some things that we as a nation need to work on. We need to start holding people accountable. You know, I don't care if a felon is running for office. If he stands up for what is right, if he has changed as a person, I'll support him. You know, and I don't care what the crime was, because I don't sit here and judge others. And that's the problem we have in our church today, that they want to be the first ones to judge people on their mistakes, and they forget to pray for them. You know, if you're going to judge them, pray for them, you know, that they do change, that there's no new victims. And I've always said in all the groups I started, is our number one goal is no new victims. You know, and I do firmly believe that. Everybody, have yourself a great day. It's beautiful outside. Talk to you later.